I guess every man thinks he'd know if his wife was cheating on him. You imagine there'd be signs, the late nights, the hidden texts, the sudden distance. But no, sometimes it hits you when you're staring right at it, across a cafe table, in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. My name's Marshall. I'm 41, own a modest carpentry business down in Asheville, North Carolina. Married my college sweetheart, Eloise, 17 years ago. We had what people called a storybook marriage. Family vacations, 2 kids in private school, Sunday dinners with her parents. I thought we were solid. I believed we were solid. But everything unraveled the day I walked into Hollow Bean Cafe. It started with a nagging hunch. Eloise had been working late for the 4th week in a row, even though her accounting firm had just wrapped their quarterly reports. She stopped wearing her wedding ring at home. Said it was chafing. She'd take her phone into the bathroom, even in the middle of brushing her teeth. Still, I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Paranoia ruins good marriages. So, I did what any reasonable man would do. I asked her if we could grab lunch together that day. She claimed she had a client meeting. Something in her voice was off. Too sweet. Too precise. I told her I'd drop something off at her office instead. She hesitated. Actually, I'm at the Hollow Bean. Client wanted to meet there. My heart started pounding. That cafe was 15 minutes away from her building and she hates their coffee. I told her I was nearby and would swing by with the paperwork anyway. She tried to protest, but I was already driving. And when I got there, I didn't walk in right away. I watched through the window first. It took me a second to even recognize her. Eloise was glowing. Her head was tilted back, laughing at something. Her hand rested on another man's wrist, lightly, but intimately, like it belonged there. He was handsome, maybe 10 years younger than me, clean-cut, confident. The way she looked at him, it wasn't business. I walked in, quiet, measured. I don't know how I stayed that calm, but I did. They both froze when they saw me. Eloise's smile cracked and vanished. The guy looked like he wanted to slide under the table. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cause a scene. I just pulled the velvet box from my pocket, the ring I had taken off that morning, the one she stopped wearing weeks ago. I walked to their table, set it down gently between their untouched lattes, and said, "I believe this belongs to you." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Then I turned to leave. But just as I reached the door, someone grabbed my arm. It wasn't Eloise. It was him. "Wait, you don't understand," he said, his voice trembling. "She said you two were separated, that you were abusive, that she was scared of you." I froze. Not because I believed him, but because of how calculated that lie was. Eloise hadn't just cheated, she'd rewritten our entire marriage to make room for her guilt. And the moment he said those words, something in my brain clicked. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a setup, and I had no idea how deep it went. I didn't go home that day. After walking out of that cafe, I drove. For hours. No music, no destination. Just the sound of tires grinding the road and my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I couldn't wrap my mind around what just happened. It wasn't just betrayal, it was betrayal with a narrative attached. A dangerous one. Eloise told him I was abusive? That we were separated? That she was afraid of me? That's the kind of thing that doesn't just ruin a marriage, it can destroy a man's entire life. I pulled over at a gas station just outside of town and sat there for a long time. At some point, I realized my phone had over 20 missed calls, all from Eloise. No texts. No explanations. Just call after call. I turned it off. And then the weirdest thing happened. A black SUV pulled up next to me. I didn't think much of it at first. But when I stepped out to get a bottle of water from the station, the driver leaned across his passenger seat and tapped on his window. "You Marshall?" he asked. My stomach twisted. "Yeah. Who's asking?" "I'd like to talk. Just a minute of your time. You don't know me, but I know who you are. And I know what's going on." Every instinct in me said to walk away. But curiosity got the better of me. I leaned closer, staying outside the car. He handed me a plain manila envelope through the window. "Don't open it here. Just listen. You're being set up. And if you don't act fast, you'll lose more than your marriage. That woman you love? She's been planning this for a while. And you're not her first." I blinked. What does that mean? She's done this before. Different state. Different name. You're part of a pattern. She finds good men with assets, builds a paper trail, destroys them, and walks away clean. I laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. "That's insane." "Is it?" he asked calmly. Then opened the envelope. I stepped back, heart hammering. "Who the hell are you?" He didn't answer. He started the engine and pulled out of the lot without another word. I sat there alone, envelope in hand, for at least 15 minutes before I had the nerve to open it. Inside were 3 photographs. One of Eloise, same smile, same posture, sitting with another man at a restaurant in Seattle. One of her holding hands with that man on a dock. And this one stopped my breath, of legal papers, restraining orders, divorce filings, and a frozen bank account. All filed under a slightly different name, Eliza Moore. I flipped through the rest of the contents. Copies of court transcripts, names of lawyers, a list of property transfers. There were dates that predated our marriage. But the tactics? Identical. It was like reading the blueprint of my own downfall. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I noticed a handwritten note at the bottom of the file. She's already moved half of your money into her private trust. The transfer is scheduled to finalize next Tuesday. If you want proof, check your joint investment account tonight. I felt sick. I had built everything with her. Every home improvement, every account, every plan for the future. And now, not only had she betrayed me, she was erasing me from my own life. I had to make a decision. Fast. But I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to yell. I was going to watch her try to play her game, and then take the board right out from under her. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my front porch with a flashlight and a notepad like some amateur detective who never planned to be one. The moonlight felt colder than usual, and every sound, crickets, distant traffic, creaking wood, sounded like a ticking clock I couldn't shut off. The stranger's envelope was still in my lap. I needed to confirm the claim. So I logged into our joint investment account, something I rarely checked because Eloise always handled finances. I expected it to take some time. It didn't. The moment I logged in, a message flashed across the screen. Transfer scheduled. Finalization in 4 days. A significant amount, over half of what we'd saved over 17 years, was en route to an account I didn't recognize. Registered to Moore Financial Holdings. I recognized the name instantly. Eliza Moore, the name on those documents in the envelope. That was her. Her alias. I didn't even react. Not yet. Just stared at the screen like it was a brick wall I'd just driven into at full speed. Then I remembered something strange from earlier. When I'd arrived at the cafe, there had been no sign out front. No receipt printer. No menu board. Just 2 chalk specials scribbled on a board, and a young barista who didn't even ask for my order. And now that I thought about it, I never saw Eloise with a laptop or client folder. Just her and that guy, laughing like nothing else existed. So I did something that I didn't think would matter at first. I tried to look up the cafe's location online, and nothing came up. I typed in Hollow Bean Cafe, Asheville. No results. No photos. No reviews. Not even a business listing. I expanded the search radius. Still nothing. No record of the place existing at all. And yet I'd stood inside it that afternoon. Watched my wife laugh across from her lover in real time. That's when I started wondering if the entire meetup had been staged. What if they knew I would show up? What if that cafe wasn't a real business, but a prop? I returned the next morning at sunrise. The parking lot was empty. The windows, taped up. No sign. No tables. No trace of what I saw the day before. The door was locked, but not bolted. I glanced around, heart pounding, and tested the handle. It creaked open. Inside was a single folding table, 2 chairs, a trash can, and nothing else. No espresso machine, no counter, no cups, not even a broom. Just 2 empty coffee cups placed precisely where I remembered them sitting. I felt my knees go weak. That's when I heard a noise from the back room. I wasn't alone. I backed out fast and slipped into my truck. My breath fogged the windshield as I stared at that hollow shell of a cafe. It had been a front, or a trap, or something else entirely, and I had walked straight into it. I didn't know what Eloise was planning, but I knew this. She wasn't some bored housewife who stumbled into an affair. This was calculated, coordinated. She wasn't just trying to leave me. She was trying to erase me. I didn't go back to the house right away. Something about standing in that fake cafe changed the way I saw everything. It was like someone had cracked the glass of my world, and now all the reflections were distorted. People walking their dogs looked like shadows. Streetlights buzzed louder than usual. Nothing felt real. When I did finally walk into the house, our house, it smelled like cinnamon and floor polish. The same way it always did. The scent mocked me, like it was trying to say, see, everything's normal. You're imagining things. But I wasn't. I noticed small things first. The mail stack was too neat. The rug in the entryway had been rotated, and her laptop, Eloise's silver MacBook that she guarded like it was sacred, wasn't on the dining table where she usually left it. I searched every room, every drawer, nothing, until I got to the guest bedroom closet. We never used it. But there, beneath old coats and Christmas lights, was a fireproof lockbox. I never knew we even had one. And it was open. Inside were folders, neatly labeled. Taxes 2019 to 2024, deeds, trusts, private accounts, health claims, divorce templates. Divorce templates. Plural. I picked one up. The draft was dated 6 months ago. It listed grounds for separation, emotional neglect, control, erratic behavior. All lies. All carefully typed in legalese. And at the bottom, her signature. Not Eloise Simmons. Eliza Moore. I flipped through the rest. Copies of my driver's license. My social security number. Account numbers. Password hints. My digital fingerprint. Everything that someone would need to walk away with, not just my money, but my identity. I sat down on the floor. My hands were shaking. There was a flash drive taped inside one folder. I plugged it into my work laptop and braced myself. There were videos. Short clips. Some I recognized. Me working in the garage, watching football. One where I raised my voice because the sink was leaking again and she'd ignored it for weeks. All taken out of context. Cropped. Tilted. Reframed. There was even one where she'd placed her phone in her lap during an argument, carefully provoking me with false accusations until I snapped and shouted, "You lie about everything." In the clip, my voice sounded unhinged. Angry. Her voice sounded calm. Steady. It was designed that way. It was like watching a documentary about a man I didn't recognize. A man she wanted the world to believe I was. Suddenly I understood what was happening. She wasn't cheating on me because she fell in love. She was building a version of me she could escape from. A version that would explain why she left. Why she took the money. Why she was innocent. This wasn't a woman running from love. This was a woman rehearsing an alibi. And I was the villain in her play. I stared at the final folder for a long time. It was marked simply, Phase 2. I didn't open it. Not yet. Because just then, I heard the garage door open. Eloise was home. She walked in humming. I was sitting at the dining table with the lockbox closed. Everything exactly as I found it. I had made sure. If she noticed I'd been in it, the game was over before I even knew the rules. Her heels clicked across the tile floor. She was still wearing the same cream blouse and dark jeans she'd had on at the cafe the day before. She stopped when she saw me. "Oh," she said. "Didn't expect you to be home." I shrugged. "Canceled a client." She looked at me for a long moment. Not suspicious. Not angry. Not guilty. Just measuring. "Something wrong?" she asked. I shook my head. "Nope." She poured herself tea. The same Earl Grey she drank every afternoon. She sat across from me, legs crossed, sipping casually, like there wasn't a forged identity in our guest closet, like there weren't video clips of me being turned into a story she planned to sell to a judge. "How was your meeting?" I asked. She blinked once. "Fine. Boring. Client canceled last minute." The lie slid out so easily, it startled me. Her tone didn't change. Her breathing stayed calm. No twitch in her eye, no tightening of the jaw. She lied like she was pouring water. I nodded slowly. "I saw you yesterday." That made her pause, but only for a second. "At the cafe," I added. Another pause. Then she leaned back, smiled faintly, and said, "You followed me?" I didn't answer. Her gaze shifted, just a little. "You're acting strange." Strange. Not hurt. Not confused. Just strange. And then, she said something I'll never forget. "If you're feeling paranoid again, we can talk about it. Maybe it's stress. You've been working long hours." That wasn't concern. That was ammunition. She was already framing me. I looked down at my tea. My own hands looked unfamiliar now. My voice sounded distant when I replied. "I think I'll take a few days away. Clear my head." She didn't flinch. She nodded once. "That might be good for you." She didn't ask where I was going. She didn't suggest therapy. She didn't offer to come. She just picked up her phone and texted someone as I stood. I didn't pack much. Just some clothes, my laptop, the envelope the stranger gave me, and one other thing, my late mother's silver locket. I'd forgotten it was tucked inside that lockbox, hidden beneath the folders. I never told Eloise I'd put it there, but somehow it ended up with her files. She knew more about me than I ever told her. And that's when I realized. She wasn't just erasing me. She was replacing me. I headed north with no plan, just distance. Checked into a roadside motel by an old train line, small place, peeling paint, no Wi-Fi. I paid cash. No ID. My phone stayed off in the glove compartment. No GPS. No accidental syncs. I wanted silence. The first call came the next evening. A landline. An actual corded phone bolted to the nightstand. Hello, may I speak to Mr. Simmons? I didn't answer with my name. He's not here, I said. Then hung up. The call came to a number no one should have. The room wasn't booked under my name. Still, they found me. I stayed quiet. Instead of running again, I opened the laptop. I stared at the final folder I hadn't touched. Phase 2. Inside, one file, Marshall, draft statement.pdf. I clicked. It was a letter, written in my voice, structured like a public confession. I recognized the emotional strain I placed on my marriage. There were moments where my behavior may have been misinterpreted as controlling. I accept my part in creating an unsafe environment for Eloise. Paragraph after paragraph, it painted me as unstable, volatile, unpredictable. It ended with, I admire Eloise's strength for leaving. I support her healing journey, and I ask for privacy as I reflect on the man I've become. She'd written it for me, in case I didn't write it myself. It was ready to go, just waiting for a signature. I closed the file. Then I noticed something else. A second folder nested within, Media Queue. I opened it. 7 video clips. Each one no more than 30 seconds. Each labeled by date and time. Moments from our life, cropped, color-balanced, audio-isolated. I was in all of them, raising my voice, looking impatient. In one, I slammed a door. In another, I rubbed my forehead while she filmed quietly across the room. Out of context, it looked like stress. Or worse. I realized then. This wasn't for a court hearing. It was for the public. If she released that letter with those clips, I wouldn't just lose money. I'd lose my name, my credibility, my business, my kids. And nobody would question it. Because everything was clean, polished, pre-cut. I looked in the mirror across the motel room. I didn't recognize the man in it, but I knew exactly what he had to do next. Day 4. I changed motels. Used a different name. Paid extra for no paper trail. That morning, I drove to a print shop 20 miles outside the city. Rented a computer by the hour. Searched public records by hand. No saved searches. No queries tied to me. I started with aliases. Eliza Moore. E. Moore. Yim Holdings. Moore Financial Group. The last one gave me a hit. Quiet case, sealed partial records. Filed in 2014. Sacramento County. Plaintiff, John H. Wallace. Defendant, Eliza Moore. No photos. No transcript. Just a summary. Asset dispute related to joint business account. Allegation of signature forgery. Plaintiff dropped claim. Settled privately. I dug deeper. Found a realtor's license issued under Eliza Moore Wallace in 2012. License suspended 2 years later for breach of contract. No details. I checked for more. Austin, Texas. Different name. Liza Harmon. Civil restraining order filed by Nathaniel Harmon. Marked as domestic discomfort with financial manipulation. Vague wording. Dismissed within 30 days. Again, settled privately. A pattern. 3 cities. 3 identities. Each time, marriage, trust accounts, asset movement, reputation damage, disappearance. Eloise wasn't hiding a double life. She was hiding a repeat performance. I sat back. Closed the tabs. Cleared the browser. Walked outside. The air smelled like cut pine. Quiet town. Wind moving through low fences and plastic flags. I called the only person I trusted. My old college friend, Jonah. Real estate attorney. Good memory. No drama. He picked up. Marshall? Man, you okay? No, I said. But I know who I married now. Long pause. You need me? Yeah, I said. I need a place to meet. And I need a notary. He gave me an address. 6 hours later, I handed him 3 signed documents, a transfer of business ownership, a temporary power of attorney, and a witness statement detailing everything I discovered. You planning to vanish? He asked, quietly. No, I said. I'm planning to resurface on my terms. He nodded. And her. I folded the final sheet, sealed it in an envelope, and slid it across the table. She's already halfway through her next move, I said. I'm just getting ahead of her ending. Jonah didn't ask more. Smart man. I left before sunrise. And I didn't tell anyone where I was going. 2 weeks later, Eloise returned to a house that no longer remembered her. The locks had changed. Her name had been removed from every deed, every account, every contract. She walked up to the porch with a travel bag and the same smug confidence I remembered from that day in the cafe. She didn't know I had already been there. Didn't know that Jonah had filed emergency protective orders to freeze all joint assets. That the account she tried to drain had been reversed. That all the digital fingerprints she planted had been reviewed by a private forensic team. Quietly, legally, she stepped onto the porch, saw the envelope taped to the door. Her name. No note. Inside were 3 items. A copy of the draft statement she wrote in my name, with a red line through it. A single-page affidavit, notarized, acknowledging her use of aliases in 3 states. And her wedding ring, the one I had placed on that cafe table, now flattened. Not broken. Just pressed. She stood there for a long time. No words. No reaction. Just the quiet realization that something irreversible had happened. I watched from a car across the street. I didn't need confrontation. I just needed closure. She left. No knock. No call. No show of anger. She knew it was over. But this isn't a story about revenge. It's about reset. A few weeks later, I moved into a cottage near a lake where no one knew my name. I started taking smaller jobs, woodwork, hand-built furniture. I slept better, ate slower, thought clearly. I'd stopped asking why she did it. Some people don't need a reason. Some people just build chaos and call it opportunity. What mattered is that I stopped making room for it. And the best part? She never saw the new life coming. Because for once, I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't chase. I just walked away. And when I did, I took everything she didn't see coming with me.